Right, good morning ladies and gentlemen. Can we make a start please? It is 10:30. I'd like to thank you all for coming to this additional meeting and hope not to keep you too long. First, apologies please.
I have apologies from councillors Giles and Ashford, please.
Thank you. Anybody else? Have a full attendance, yeah? Good. Item 2, the minutes of the meeting on the 10th of October, which have been circulated. Shall we take them page by page to see if there's anything of accuracy or information? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5, 6, 7, and 8. There being no comments, may I sign with a correct record, please?
Chairman, very happy for you to sign with a correct record. I'm trying to find out whether my memory is as faulty as I think it is. Did we never receive these before this distribution?
Yes, you get an email to you.
No.
Within 12 days.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Apologies.
Chairman's announcements. I'd like to welcome David Ober here today for his first meeting. He replaces Sue Day, who's had to resign at the business meetings. So welcome, David, and I hope you enjoy your term as a member of the Fire Force. So I now move on then. Declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations they wish to make?
Chairman, declaring interest in item 5.
Really? Thank you. That's noted. Anybody else? Right, thank you very much. In which case we'll move on to decisions. Item 5. It's the report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the member-led review of the payments. The first thing I'd like to say is I would like to thank publicly Ralph Butcher and Simon Byron for the immense amount of work that they've done on this. You can see from the paper trail, it's been a very thorough review. And from the management side, I would like to thank Tracy Raby, who's done so much work to get this information together for us. And of course, to our legal people who has been behind it to make sure we act in the right way. So Jeff, thank you very much for your work. I'm now going to call on Ralph to present the report, following which we will have a chance to discuss it and ask questions. Ralph.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to concur in what you have said in thanking Councillor Simon Baywater and also Tracy Raby for all the work they put into this review. This was instigated by yourself because of an open letter from Brandon Lewis to yourself and the Fire Authority. And as you say, there was a lot of work went into it. We studied a lot, we spent a few hours at it, and Tracy, thanks for her, she's done all the digging, brought us all the papers we wanted, so we've got everything to look through. I think I'd just like to say that we came up with some recommendations which you can see on page 1 to 3, which to me are very important. And then on page 11, you can see the conclusions. And I don't wish to say really anymore because you've all read the papers, I presume, and I, with others, will try and answer any questions if you've got questions for us.
Thank you, Ralph. Who would like to start? Simon, do you want to say?
Mr. Chairman, no, I haven't really got any more to add because I think the paper's pretty self-explanatory. Again, I'll just echo the thoughts. Thanks to Councillor Butcher and Tracy Raby for all their efforts and assistance with it. So I think the report speaks for itself. Really.
Thank you. Open to the floor.
Chair, please. Thank you.
Councillor Sutton.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, Were the members of the review committee given a specific remit, a written brief which they worked with?
If I can answer that, Mr. Chairman, yeah. We really took the remit from the letter that was sent by Brandon Lewis to the chairman and the questions that he was asking, we went through to answer all those questions. That was the main remit of the review. We looked at other things obviously going through at the same time.
Yes, but there wasn't a document from the fire authority which commissioned you specifically to look at items on behalf of the fire authority. You were working off of the correspondence you got from the minister and the authorities advised.
No. No.
Thank you. I'm just looking at page 2 of the executive summary. I'm very new to this, but I've been in contact with this report for about 4 or 5 weeks now. And the one thing that came to my eye straight away is where it's got retirement profile. And it talks about a clear succession plan. And I know in the past, clear succession plans that I've been involved with ranges from, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll see what happens in the future, to a robust plan that's maintained, reviewed and actually used. Have we any experience of succession plans? What are we going to do? Are we going to make our own succession plan? Are we going to have members involved? Or are we going to take a succession plan from neighbouring authorities or even a national one?
I think we've mentioned several there that we would be looking at all things, but with the succession plan, the reason we were looking at that is because when you to employ somebody in one of the higher positions, the time and the cost that was incurred, it's a very long and expensive process. So we thought that we should be looking to make sure that we've got this process going now. We've probably got 3 to 4 years. We wanted the process going now. And yes, in my experience, we would look at others. We would look at other succession plans. We would ask members for advice. I presume I'd always ask members for advice. Whether the chairman would like anything or Councillor Bywater would like to add on to that.
Not particularly, no. I mean, ultimately, you've raised a very good point. It's got to be clear. I do think that if we prepare going forward, that was a key issue that Ralph and I looked at, was that we didn't wait until it was too late, that we made long-term decisions in relation to that.
Can I just ask a supplementary? When you've made the decision, when you've put together a succession plan, will that become guidance or will it become policy?
Well, that's a matter for the fire authority. If we put together a succession plan, I'm pretty sure that it would have to come before this committee to be agreed.
I have in mind, colleagues, as has been said already, that we have possibly about 3 years to get this right. And with all of it, I want to make sure that by the time that 3 years is up, we have a proper policy for succession. I think it's really important that we don't get to the stage where we suddenly find somebody's going and we're in panic. And so what I'm looking for is a programme of work over the next 3 years. It needn't be detailed at the moment, but to get it started so that when we get to the point that we need to make changes, we have something to work with. I can't tell you at the moment that I'm giving it much thought, except to say early planning is essential. But how we do it, I'm quite happy to do it. Sorry, Councillor Jones.
I started out when I was at Callow Youth 4 years ago as a manpower planner, so this is very much in my backyard. And I look at the figures there showing potentially 5 out of 6 current brigade managers, etc., with some horror, and feel that what's being discussed here is entirely appropriate. I see succession planning as having an insurance policy. In other words, that there is someone that we feel could step into the breach, but we're not saying this person will definitely do it, because at that stage you have to have, I believe, an open and honest process. So that's the first comment. My second comment is under 513 on page 9. I just see a disconnect between the heading which says political and the text. would have expected under political to see reference to contributions of a political nature that have been made as a result of the action that we undertook.
Yes, good point.
I think the text is perfectly fine, but the heading is wrong, or if the heading's right, then the text is wrong.
Yeah, I think the word political throws up a lot of things, and we'd probably say the heading is probably not what we get.
What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that there's a disconnect.
You're not suggesting how you want to walk.
It's a matter for the authority.
Any suggestions?
Change the title to managerial.
Practical.
Managerial?
I think it does raise the question as to whether the risks include political, and I think they did, and whether we ought to have some text which deals with it.
Can you leave that with us?
Delighted.
No, can you not?
Yeah, I'll speak to Tracy and Simon, and we'll discuss it.
Anybody else? Councillor Sorry. Councillor.
Yes, I just wanted to thank the Overview Committee for the work that they've done, because as the only person left on the authority from that original appointments committee, it has of course been a concern to me, and I think you will find that the committee has clarified the fact that the abatement process was carried out properly, and I feel very happy now that the work that we did was in order, and I thank you all for your support with it.
Councillor Smith.
I'd like to say something, but I think Councillor Jamil put his name up first.
Sorry. Right, let's go to
I'm happy to wait my turn.
Yeah, no, Councillor Jamil.
That was before me.
Councillor Next.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on, in the executive summary, on page 1, 4th set of blocks down. The recommendation is that the terms of reference for the appointment committee are revised to require that future decisions in relation to the appointment and starting salary of the chief fire should be ratified by the full council. I think that's very important. I think in addition to that, it would be very helpful if there are any further, if or when there are further re-engagement requests from senior officers that are going to come to the appointments committee, I think that all the membership of the Fire Authority should be informed that that is happening, because while the Fire Authority will ratify those decisions, it would be helpful to have input, for the appointments committee to have input from all members before they make the decision. Does that make sense?
I think you'll find Councillor Smith wants to make a very similar point.
Excellent, very wise.
Well, basically, I was actually looking at that myself, and I did have a brief chat with Savita. At the moment, yes, I'm happy with the recommendations, but that one I'd like to see extended further, because I understand that other fire officers have took advantage of this or used this policy in the past, and I think that all decisions, whatever rank, whoever goes through this policy, should all be ratified by the Fire Authority, not just limited to the senior management team.
What we're saying is firefighters, senior management, anybody who goes through abatement, they all go through the same process.
That's fine. It's slightly different from my request, which was that the Fire Authority members should be informed before such a request goes to the appointments committee, so that the appointments committee can be aware of other members.
Chairman, the appointments committee only deals with the appointments of the directors. It doesn't deal with appointments lower down the hierarchy. So by widening it out to the whole of the uniformed service, it's going to make quite a change to the appointments committee's terms of reference. At the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, but decisions are made by the senior officers in relation to people down the line. It's only in relation to the top officers and directors. Appointments committee would be involved. So, where do you want to go with that? Leave it at the moment with the people lower down the hierarchy, or you wanting to change the appointments?
I'd just like to see that whoever goes through this policy, or the abatement policy, that the fire authority knows about everybody.
So we can certainly notify the fire
So we're not
authority
distinguishing.
lower down the hierarchy when it's happening, if that's what you want.
Well, let's deal with Councillor Smith's point first.
Yeah.
That everybody goes through the same procedure.
I use the appointments committee to do that. I'm
No,
saying,
well, not necessarily, but they all come from the fire authority. No, I suppose you're going to have to do that, aren't you?
well, we're
You're going to have to go through appointments.
we dealt with under delegated powers to officers to do with lower down the hierarchy, the local directors, and there's to change the appointments committee, and then we can notify members every time that happens, if that's what you want.
Right, how do you feel about that? On the same subject.
Or are you
Yeah,
wanting
I
us to
just-
notify you before the decisions are made?
Before the decisions are made.
But going back to Councillor Singer is saying, it is a cross-party committee, the appointments committee. So you're saying like in before.
I'd just like the members to be informed that such a decision is coming before.
It is a cross-party committee, so everyone is involved. Each party is involved.
It's on the same point.
Yes, it is. I was going to say, the reasons for this recommendation is because although this was done in February 2013 when the chief was re-employed or re-engaged, a lot of new members on the fire authority, I wasn't on at the time, and it wasn't really public knowledge, it was only known within house. And so we recommended that any major decisions should be ratified by the fire authority. The first person to take up re-engagement was a firefighter. I'm not sure whether you'd really like to have an input in, because the officers that's working with him all the while, with him or her, I should say, it's fine. But I think when you get to senior staff, that is when the fire authority should be involved. That was what we was thinking in these recommendations. But I'm happy to look with Tracy and Simon and carry on further to see if people's asking for more.
Yeah, certainly echo what Councillor Richard said. I think that's what we pay officers for, and I think it's only the senior officers that we really need to get involved with. And if we're informed, then that's okay. But if we're getting involved with everything, I think it's too much.
Is there a consensus on that? Right, so we leave the report as it is.
There is a what Councillor Jamil said was if we were informed, we would have to make the decisions. So I think there is a slight alteration.
So, if we're kept informed.
Well, Councillor Smith is asking that we ratify all decisions. So if the firefighter wants to re-engage, we ratify that. I can't see a problem with that. But I don't think we need to be engaged at the time of it's being done. It should be left in the method it's being done now. So we are being informed.
Can I be clear? Are you saying that the officers can make the decision whether or not to do it, but they cannot implement that until it comes to a member body, for the member body to say yes? Is that what you're saying? So it'll delay the actual implementation of that decision until members say yes. In which case, which body do you want that to go to?
Well, why can't it be the full fire authority?
That will delay by 3 months.
My view is that we should not demand to ratify every decision, that we should only have to ratify the senior decisions, but that we would like to be informed that other decisions have been made, so that the management remains with the management of other staff remains with the senior management as it should be, but that as fire authority members, when a decision like that is made, we are informed of it.
Yes.
Or you could just have a notice of item of information to be noted at the meetings.
Yes. We'll find a way of doing that. Councillor Chapp.
Mr. Chapp. I always get confused a little bit about this word ratification, and to me it should be approve. So for senior fire officers, I'm taking from what's been said so far the senior fire officers, where this applies, it's approved by the fire authority, and it's because it's senior fire officers, it's not going to be that often. I know they only meet on a quite on a regular basis, but if need be, we could. It's important enough, and it's been proved to be important enough from past experience that if need be, we could call an additional meeting to include this. So I'd like to change Councillor Smith's wording slightly to approve rather than ratify.
Yeah. Everybody happy with that? Who's next?
Thank you, just to bring up the term, which we approved very much at the end.
Yes, thank you.
Are we very much at the end?
I don't know yet.
I don't want the end to overtake me.
I'll make sure.
Let me go first then.
I'll make sure when we get to the end of
Chair, the only thing I was going to add was that, even though, we've done the work on this, Councillor what I don't like is the message to go from this meeting and public is what we did, what was wrong. Even though we've now made recommendations on what's going to change, we did what we did, based on the best decision in the process at the time. So it's more a comment than an actual question. And now, as a forward-looking fire authority, we've now made these changes, and now the process will evolve. And
yes.
Will evolve. So that's what I would like, the message we sent out from this meeting for that.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. We're building from the ashes. So that I don't think, as we've received the report, that the authority actually did anything actually wrong. So I think in future, I think we learned what we didn't do, but it's also an opportunity to look to the future. There are going to be changes. There's no doubt about that. And I think we build those changes from what we're doing today. Is there anybody else before I call upon Councillor Sellers?
Okay, thank you, Chair. The reason for my earlier comment about agreement was I do recollect that somewhere in the correspondence between the Minister and yourself and the authority and the various people back and forth, the Minister did make comments about the structure of the senior staff. And it wasn't addressed, and I don't know whether that was right or wrong. I'm passing no comment about that, but I don't want that actually to be lost. And can I suggest that when we come to the succession plan in the future, that one of the items that we do look at is the senior staff structure, because with the succession changing and in view of the financial hardship, I do think that would be the appropriate time to deal with that. That's all. I just didn't want that item lost. I did have a brief correspondence with you about it. I wrote you. It was only in passing. I think we should make do this. And it wasn't the right time to do it in Peter Capital as it was, and there was quite attention to us and the Minister. So I think it could be done in a measured way at a later date, but I don't want it lost over the time. Thank you.
Right. If there's nobody else, can we go back to the recommendation? There are concern and approve the findings and recommendation from the overview of speaking on the pay policies. Are you all agreed? Unanimous?
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, I just want to put to you my suggestions from where we go with this, but if anybody has any other ideas.
Do you want to get Graham back here?
He's out for the next issue.
No, he's coming in.
Yes, continue getting on. In handling this in terms of the Minister, I intend to draft a letter to the Minister today based on what we decided, and I'm going to send him a copy. And I then plan to not put out a press release, because it's quite interesting that it all seems to have died down. I mean, all the comment we had from the press release has died down, and there's nobody here. Now the question is, do you think that we ought to inform the press of what we've done, shall we leave it for them to find it out and just post our letter on our website?
I think it's important in this issue to be proactive with the press and take the initiative. Otherwise,
Graham, can you just stand by the door? Can you just stand by the door? I'm quite finished.
otherwise, bring the tea in a minute. Sorry, Jim. Otherwise, it looks as though we might have something to hide. And my own opinion about that is that we should be proactive and take the initiative and be prepared for the consequences. Then we're actually determining the agenda rather than for the school.
I just want to support that really. I think, from the outset, I think we should be as transparent and fluid as possible.
But in that case, what I will do, I will send the press a copy of everything that I sent to you, which is what he did to us before the flood. Okay? All right then, thank you everybody. The next item 6. I'm going to call on Matthew Warren.
Thank you, Chairman. Follows on from the previous item, really. It was draft, depending on very much what was included in the last item. The pay policy that's before you relates to the forthcoming financial year. It has been significantly changed and updated, largely to ensure that it covers every aspect. Our previous one, when this should be compliant, this goes perhaps the extra mile, and the recommendation of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee was that we took the best practice. So we looked at many other fire rescue services, and this one actually is an existing in Nottinghamshire, it's similar to Nottinghamshire fire rescue service. We've adopted it, we've made it Cambridgeshire, right, and effectively it now fully, with our previous one did fully, this one now is much more than fully complies with the legislation and the way it was met 2011. Okay, so I'm happy to go through it in much detail, or official details as you wish, but it does effectively set out page by page the local pay review, the different levels of pay and how pay is established at various levels, whether it's through national and joint council or through local arrangements. It talks about the various allowances that are paid to again different members of staff, be it operational or non-operational, and it also talks around severance payments and events, so you go down that route in the future. And it also does make reference to re-engagement quite clearly in 5.1, which let's say is re-engagement again. It's clear in the previous policy. But any comments that members of the questions that members have got a decision on?
Thank you, Matthew. Simon.
Just a quick one. Thanks very much for your efforts in putting this together. How easy is it going to be to access this information from the website? Is that the question?
It will be a link on the front page of the website. Okay. It will be a link on the front page of the website, and there'll also be a link on that front page to senior officers' pay as well. Okay, so if you want to draw down the further, I think
Councillor Over.
Thank you, through you, Chairman. Matt, on page 4, I think it is, yes, it's pensions. 3.7.1, it talks about the 2 5 houses pension schemes.
Yes.
I've no idea about who were on the 1992 scheme and how many people were on the 2006. What's the balance? If you go? And similarly, on the next page, on page 6, 4.6.1, we've got the local government pension scheme, and again, how many people would actually be on that? I'm just really inquiring about the balance within the authority.
Okay, in terms of the, if I can, I'll come back to you in terms of the 2006 and 1992 firefighter schemes, because actually we have a mixture of on-call firefighters that are on the schemes and whole-time firefighters that are on the schemes. So I'll actually come back to all members with those percentages so you can get an understanding of the split. In terms of the local government pension scheme, we're looking probably about 130 employees that are on that scheme. It covers both support and our control room operators who are in the local government pension scheme. So,
So what kind of percentage is that?
That's we'd have about 90% of the support side of the organisation on the local government pension scheme.
That's right.
Councillor Peach.
I just saw in the publication, I think we probably all get as councillors every week from the local government association. There was an article the other week about this review and future fire and rescue services and all that sort of thing. I know that is somewhat in the future, but I just wondered, had there been any thought or acknowledgement of looking at that when this statement was drawn up? Well,
Ken Knight review.
Yes, I mean, I know that's very much sort of
Yeah.
the government haven't given a response to that.
They haven't as yet.
But the sort of synopsis of it all is that in the future, you know, there has to be a lot more working together or amalgamation or that sort of thing. And I just wondered if we've got a draft policy statement coming up now on pay. I wondered how much thought, or if any of this was based on things that might happen in the future, although probably not widely in the immediate future.
Not the immediate future. This obviously just deals with one financial year at a time as part of the legislation. In terms of, I think, the forward plan, though, certainly we are always looking to collaborate with other fire rescue services where we can. There's opportunities within ICT and within our control rooms. We combine like the team to try and again save money and improve the level of service that we deliver. So those opportunities we are always looking to embrace. In terms of full combination, we did some work, something to remember, we did some work before last, looking at the potential in Suffolk. Didn't really prove to be particularly fruitful at the time, but I think if those opportunities do present themselves in the future, certainly we'll be open to actually looking at those robustly.
Or indeed any police authorities or local authorities.
Well, absolutely. And again, we're looking at, certainly our buildings, we're looking to develop them more effectively with our local authority colleagues and police where we can share those facilities absolutely as well.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may ask Matthew a question about 4.6.5, which is a section, I suppose, of clarification, really. Disturbance allowance. I'm not clear from there where point A and point B is, whether it's the place of work or the person's home address in that particular item, and also moving work location. Does that mean that someone who perhaps would be redundant on one site could be requested under there to move to another work location, or is it something which is an optional rather than mandatory?
I'll say potentially. What we have, and again we've had this in the past, if it's from your home location, so if we're requesting somebody to move and it's a longer journey, then we will pay the additional mileage from where they're originally placed. So that's the first part of it. In terms of the situation around redundancy, there's effective parameters that are set. So if you're moving, I think it's more than 7 miles.
If you're moving workplace location intently, it's a redundancy situation.
Yeah.
If you're just moving, unless you have a provision in someone's contract to move them around contraction. If you don't have that provision, it's called a workplace redundancy by changing the workplace. So technically they're redundant. You can offer suitable alternative employment, and the individual decides whether or not what you're offering is suitable.
Okay, it was the word required in there, whether or not you could require someone to work in another site after
We do have that provision in some of our firefighters' contracts.
Some of our firefighters we do.
You can move them around.
We can move them in their contract. It actually says we can require them to move them around.
And this clause doesn't apply to people that we recruit from other authorities.
No.
That would be something that's part of their recruitment package.
That's right.
Okay. Councillor Goodwin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of minor questions really. 3.7.11, messing allowed, aid station personnel in response to
This is for members of the watch. It's not.
We did pay us salaries, so that was
Just the other one, sorry, there's a second question.
Jack, can you speak up a bit?
Sorry,
Just say it.
can you hear me? Am I? Sorry. Yeah, but when I really get going.
Probably they don't want to.
4.6.3, honorariums.
Yes.
I'd just like an example of any that we've instigated, say, in the last year, and how many, and what the cost could be around that.
Obviously, the amount we award is based on the level of performance. So there are perhaps £100 here, the nominal fee, to perhaps £1,000 if somebody has done an exceptional job in terms of the project management. So, as an example, we have people that outside of their day job, they'll take responsibility for implementing a given project. They do that in their own time, with no additional payment, and this is actually a reflection of those successful implementation of that type of project. So again, we're only a handful in the given year, maybe 10, 15 a year.
So we're not talking about any large amounts.
No.
There used to be a practice where if you wanted someone to do a project, you promote them to do the project. And from an operational perspective, that doesn't make any sense because we have a supernumerary, we have extra staff we don't need. So the decision we took as a team was rather than paying increasing their dual responsibility, we asked them to do the project, and if they did a good job, depending on the outcome, we would then so it probably ends up cheating for the organisation because we don't just pay the same amount of work and event.
But does it give people recognition?
That's the point of it, yeah. It's really just to thank people for going above and beyond what we would expect to do.
One of the chief kind of considerations in giving out is whether or not the authorities see benefits. A classic example would be, for example, the control staff. We usually go in honorarium after we change over to the combined control side because they've gone way above and beyond their normal daily role to ensure that quality on time, which clearly shows significance to the fire function.
So each member then would get.
Yeah, consider it.
In that scenario, actually, each member of the team did. They've been put, if you remember, they've all been put at risk of redundancy. So they were at threat of losing their job for a significant period of time. We went through the restructure. We actually took on another liaison service. And actually, at the end of the day, providing better service and saving a significant amount of money. So actually, in recognition of all of that and all that's changed, actually all consolidate must be followed.
It might be important to add that we don't award ourselves. Just
I wouldn't ever think you would, Graham.
Right, would somebody else like to contribute to the discussion on this paper? In which case, can we go to the recommendation? Item 2.1. The fire authority is asked to approve the pay policy of appendix 1. Are you all happy? Thank you. Agenda item 7 speaks for itself, industrial action update and partial performance. Right, will you then?
Thank you. Now, members, we're aware that up to date in the current ongoing dispute, there have been 9 periods of strike action, most of them reasonably short in duration. There's been a lull over the last month or so while the FBU have been meeting with the Minister and the DCLG negotiating team. I think I'm right in saying they've met on 2 occasions this month. Last one was on the 28th of this month, and I believe the FBU executive met yesterday. There's been no announcement from them as yet, so I assume they're probably carrying on today. So there is potential, of course, for the matter to be resolved, which is what we all like to see, but there is, however, potential for the matter to be escalated. Now, so far our contingency arrangements have been pretty robust and they've done fairly well, but we don't know what the FBU's tactics are going to be should there be a requirement for further strikes. And members may also be aware that not only did we have the mandate for strike action, but on the 4th of December the FBU extended a further ballot to all of their members, including control staff, for action short of a strike, which now gives the FBU a mandate to go for strike action or to go for other action short of a strike. Now, there's been some significant cost to this authority in terms of putting out contingency arrangements in place. And so far we're up to about £130,000 net of recouping money back for those strike periods when firefighters who have been on strike. Now that's indirect and direct cost. Some of that cost is about the wages that we've been paying people to provide the contingency arrangements. Some of it is about the work that they've not been able to do while they've been covering arrangements and the work that thus needs to be done in the future, and training and things of that nature. So there is a significant substantial cost, but I think it's important to make it clear that even should this authority deem partial performance or the ability to move to a partial performance arrangement will not cover the cost. So for example, if firefighters determine that they want to go out on strike for the next for 3 hours one night, and we decide to lock them out for 8 hours of that shift, we would recover 11 hours of cost, but it still won't recoup the cost of the strike. It will potentially, of course, worsen relationships between this authority and its firefighters, when actually we try to keep this dispute between the firefighters and central government. So there is a risk of that. However, we have no idea, unfortunately, what the FBU tactics are going to be, whether they're going to extend the length of strikes, whether they're going to have smaller strikes mixed with action short of a strike, and what times of day it's going to be. So what this paper is actually asking members to do is to give delegated authority to the chairman and myself in association with other members the chairman sees fit at the time, to agree that we have the ability to move to a partial performance arrangement if we see fit. And I'd stress that we have no intention of moving to partial performance at this stage. The behaviour on both sides of the fence, as far as the dispute is concerned, both on the part of contingency crews but also on the part of striking firefighters, has been exemplary. The fact that we are able to use our fire stations and our fire equipment and maintain relationships says a huge amount about relationships that have been built up in this organisation over many years, and it would not be our intention to make a decision to disrupt that without serious consideration. Strike action is fundamentally a breach of contract, so it is legal for the authorities to determine that it will not accept partial performance. And partial performance can take two avenues really. The first avenue being that firefighters decide only to work 8 hours, so only 12-hour shift or 15-hour shift, or it could be that they choose to take action short of the strike and not fulfil the full terms of their contract. Either way, in law, the authority has the right not to accept that partial performance of the contract, and thus can then decide that it will take the full amount of pay away for that shift. And that's fundamentally the ability you'd be giving the chairman and myself in terms of accepting partial performance. Now, there is no absolute here, but you don't have to, if you decide that you're going to move to a partial performance, you don't have to take the whole shift just because you have the ability to. You could move it up in slow stages and steps. Now, having said, as I said before, there's no financial reason for us to do this, and there is a risk of worsening relationships. We do, however, feel that, given that we don't know what the FBU executive at the national level is going to do, there is a benefit in having the ability to move to this should we need to use it as a lever in effect, to try and get some influence on the behaviour of the FBU executive. Or if the dispute rolls on and on, seemingly interminably, that actually we have some ability to try and create a situation where something moves in the system to create a resolution. I think we need to look at this in the light of the current contingency arrangements standing up. Should the FBU move to longer periods of strike action, then there's no doubt that we will be under some severe stress. And although our contingency arrangements will stand up, they're going to be sorely tested in terms of longer duration disputes. And if that continues for some considerable period of time, then we may wish to use that lever to try and get a resolution to the dispute. The reason we bought it now is because, well, there has been a lull. Hopefully, as I said, it will be resolved. But the FBU, I think, even the situation will be resolved, there will be some kind of escalation to the dispute. So we thought it wise to ask members at this stage for the ability to move to partial performance on the basis that we don't know what the tactics are going to be, and it's totally impractical to pull the authorities together within 7 days, which is only the notice that the FBU requires to give us of industrial action. So we're looking for you to agree for that delegated authority on this occasion, so that we have the tool in the box. But I stress again, not that it's something that we want to use or would use lightly.
Chairman, can I just explain, there's a slight error in the delegation. You can't delegate to you as chairman, as an individual. You can delegate to the chief fire officer in consultation with you. So you can change the wording around to read that. So confirm the delegation authority to make decisions on partial performance to the chief fire officer in consultation with the fire authority chairman and other members as appropriate. And that immediately.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to resolve I will pull together one member from each political party to take that decision. So I think it's appropriate something like this, so we can do this. And on that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has or hasn't taken part in this strike, all those who've been part of the resilience team. We've done extremely well. Thank you to members for visiting the stations. That's been very much appreciated by the unions and the teams running the settings. So I think we've done extremely well so far to get through it, and let's hope that. Would anybody like to comment? Jack?
I just wanted to say, obviously, that I've visited the stations throughout the Christmas period and before, and everyone has really worked together and behaved in a very professional manner, whether it's from the team who have been actually covering the strike period and those who have been on the line. So I want to thank everybody, and everybody's been so welcoming when we've gone down. There's been no aggravation whatsoever. But I would very much like, on behalf, obviously, of Peterborough, if there are any consultations to be enforced, then I would like to be part of that. I know we'll take very much part of that. I would also like to be part of that, and I know you will do that, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Butcher.
Listening to yourself, Peter, about any of the other members is appropriate. I totally agree with what you said, that you should be asking a lead member from other parties of this fire authority. And I just wonder whether that ought to be in writing or just leave it as members as appropriate.
I think I'd like it in writing.
Chair, I'm a bit uncomfortable with this, and especially the timing. This whole dispute, as we've said, is between the FBU and central government. I think by going down this road, we're actually almost localising it. So I welcome what you said about the really works that you can say. I just think that the timing of it is not right. So I don't think I can support it as it is.
I agree. I'm not at all comfortable about making this decision today. Effectively, what we're doing if we make this decision today is delegating the authority to the chief fire officer to to make this decision. And while I hear what you say about consulting, we would have made a decision to delegate the authority to the Chief Finance Officer. There is, I completely understand that you would consult, but there is no, once we've delegated this decision, there is no requirement for you to, or the Chief Finance Officer, to take any notice of what anybody else says. So we would be effectively delegating what is in fact a very sensitive and important decision to the Chief Finance Officer. And I'm not convinced that we would be fulfilling our role properly in delegating such a critical decision. The other point I want to make is that we have another fire authority meeting in a fortnight's time. So actually there is no need to make this decision today. We could wait for a fortnight and see if there are developments. If it appears that the strike is escalating at that stage, we could then make a decision based on better information to delegate if we wanted to. But I think that if we do delegate, it should be for a defined period of time. It should not be, I mean, this has no end period at all. It should be perhaps under defined circumstances so that we retain control. I don't know, maybe my legal expert can help with this, but I think it would be helpful. I would be happier to delegate if there was some written analysis about written form of words to make sure that the consultation is actually written in rather than it's just a verbal commitment made at the meeting. So my suggestion is that we do not make this decision today. I think we can comfortably hold off for a fortnight. If it is felt very important to have some kind of delegation by the next meeting in a fortnight's time, perhaps you could rewrite it and reword it with a defined timescale, with some clearer circumstances about when the decision will be made and some clearer circumstances about how the consultation will take place.
Chairman, can I just point out the delegation already exists. It already exists in the delegation scheme to officers. The Chief Fire Officer at the moment has the delegated power to determine in consultation with the relevant members the Fire Authority's response to any future industrial action affecting the Fire Authority's services. So the delegation already exists. I think we're just bringing this to you to talk about the particular matter about partial performance. So if you wanted to take away the delegation, you'd have to change the officer delegation scheme as it stands.
That sounds very unclear about what
But this is now widening that in relation to partial performance. You're going to be looking at the chief officer delegation scheme at meetings in the future, probably in May, and then perhaps you can revisit that then if you want to, and make it clear about who the relevant members are.
If it and for chief officer,
Of course, I will say, it's never been my intention to consult with the chairman and other members as the chairman described and then ignore.
I understand that.
Then ignore what they said. Although it says to consult, really it's kind of like one fire authority being cut off for doing action like this.
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to particularly I'm really uncomfortable about this, and there was a number of comments I'd like to make. Firstly, I understand fully the employers' concern about cost effectiveness. I'd just like to ask the Chief whether or not this is raised now as part of a campaign, but rather as part of a wider consciousness raising by the other chief fire officers. Are other chief fire officers making these sorts of comments as well? And does it come out of the chief fire officers meeting? The other point is that the potential for this to go wrong is immense. And I am really concerned. I would support Councillor Metzger's proposal that we put this back a couple of weeks, because I'm going to think about this and I'm going to take soundings about it. Because if this were to go wrong without the full authority being involved, I think we'd all be feeling very silly about it. And our good relationship, dispute is with the government. but we really do not want to lose our working relationship with the firefighters. That's our main concern, and it is very precarious. You know, lots of people will be lost in fracture in one decision. And just as an aside, you look at the political makeup. I mean, you're not a political committee. You look at the political makeup of the consultees, and people representing who might be termed to be representing our interest in with the union would certainly be a very considerable minority. So I would really like the whole authority to be involved. I'm very anxious about this.
Councillor Shevins.
I agree with virtually everything that's just been said. My key concern in this is to consider what we gain by moving now and what we potentially risk by moving now, as against taking a decision in a fortnight's time when the atmosphere will be clear. And I very much support the idea that we put back this decision for a fortnight so that we have clarity about the situation we're likely to face.
Councillor Rylance.
I agree with Councillor Sars and Councillor Smith. I think we really do. I really think we need to keep the firefighters on side, and I think we could so easily now upset the apple cart. We don't know the result of the meeting which is taking place with the FBU and the government at the moment. I think we should wait another fortnight before we actually make a decision on this.
Councillor Rylance.
Just going to echo what the colleagues have said.
Councillor Whistle.
Thank you, Chairman. I also have reservations. I understand the financial implications of further strike action, but I echo what's been said previously, and I would just like to ask: have any other fire authorities made this decision?
Well, I think possibly what Councillor himself was asking about what the chiefs are talking about at the moment. I think the only authority that I'm aware of that have done anything in terms of partial performance thus far as Essex, which I think we did something on New Year's Eve. There is a general consensus amongst chief fire officers to be doing the kind of thing that we're doing here today, which is discussing with the authorities the ability to do it. But there's no great rush to they're all in the same situation, saying this is a central government dispute, but we need the tool should we need it, because we don't know what's going to happen. So that's the general feeling. No great rush to make life more difficult.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I mean, you brought in Essex. Yes, we all heard the news and everything. You just brought in also the fact there's no rush, so would it hurt really to wait 2 weeks, maybe all get together, put some more work in? Would it hurt? I'm asking for clarification on that. And also, we have to work out what would happen on cross-border arrangements when something happened like this. So like Essex, they went through this. Did we make arrangements for cross-border? That sort of thing.
Can I just add to that? Because I was made aware on my visits to some of the industrial action that there was an issue regarding Essex, and when they actually went back to work and when we didn't. Is there any sort of clarity on that as well?
The only clarity I have, my understanding, is that on the New Year's Eve strike, which ended at midnight here, the Essex fire crews were effectively locked out of those stations until the following day shift. So the whole of the night shift was taken from the start of the shift.
So did we offer a responsibility to cover for that while they were locked out?
Well, we have mutual agreement arrangements, and we would honour those mutual agreement arrangements.
So it's costing our authority as opposed to Essex?
Yes, but it's relatively very small. We do very little cross-border activity.
Did you want to?
Going back to Councillor Smith's.
Can I just add that? I know we're going slightly off track here, but then that's what I do. Basically, bringing that point in, we've got cross-border arrangements, then we've got to look at everybody's cross-border arrangements as well.
Let me give you a scenario. The this afternoon the FBU executive announced that what they're going to do is they're going to have 15-minute strikes for the next 3 months at 3 o'clock on Sunday morning. Every Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I have no idea if what they're going to do. Then that would seem to be a difficult decision, a decision set to irritate and escalate. In which case, we would like the ability to respond to that. If however, the FBU executive said we're going to have a number of strikes because we want to keep this dispute going to Cambridgeshire settlement with the government to force the minister into a position where he's got to move, which is a legitimate negotiation, tactic on their part, and said, well, we're going to do it at midday on a Wednesday. That's a whole different kettle of fish because it's much easier for us to deal with it on a midday on a Wednesday than it is at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And the FBU executive, of course, has the right to change its tactics at a moment's notice without any formal notification to us, other than the 7 days which they are obliged by law to give us. So it's just protection in case something radical should occur. Now, without being privy to the discussions ongoing in the FBU executive at the moment, I have no idea what tactics they might feel they need to employ, if any. That's the element of risk.
Councillor Goodwin?
I just wanted to clarify from what Jeff, the guidance he just gave us. Have I got it clear in my mind that at the moment the Chief Fire Officer can make that decision, or the senior management team, without the chair or anybody else being involved?
No, it's in consultation with the relevant members.
And that is the case at the moment, is it?
Yeah, the chief.
Or is that what we're being asked to do?
The case at the moment, ignore this paper.
Yeah.
Under the existing delegation scheme, the chief has the power to determine in consultation with the relevant members the fire authority's response to any future industrial action affecting the fire authority's service.
So that's in place already?
Correct.
And this is just to ask to continue that?
No, that's to ask about the specific point about partial performance. How you as politicians wish the officers to respond in relation to, say, 15 minutes being taken out of a shift. How do you want to respond to that? Is only 15 minutes paid taken? Or is anything else happening? That's what this paper's about.
So he doesn't have the power for this?
He actually has got the power at the moment to do this, but he's asking your guidance. He's asking your guidance on this paper as to how you want him to handle it. He's actually got that power in consultation with the relevant members.
And also,
you don't make that decision on it. It is in consultation anyway.
yes, I'm trying to give you some assurance that obviously I would not wish to act unilaterally on such an issue.
Councillor Shevins?
Looking at the meeting from your standpoint, Chairman, it seems to me that there is a consensus from what might be referred to as the left wing, as you look at it, that delaying that, if it didn't get us out of a certain amount of difficulty, we could re-examine the situation at that time. I think there is almost universal appreciation around the table of the cooperation that has existed and the smooth way in which this has been handled by all sides. And some of us see that as fragile and would not want it placed in jeopardy unnecessarily. So my question is, does the Chief Fire Officer feel the imperative to have this decision taken today as opposed to in a fortnight's time?
I think I might be able to better answer that question if we had a statement from the FBU executive.
But we don't, and we're here now.
But we might this evening. So not having a statement from the FBU executive at this point, I'd rather have it now. But that might change as soon as they make a statement. It's a bit of crystal ball gazing here, unfortunately, Council, and I have no idea what the FBU executive might want to do. Is 2 weeks going to the question you perhaps you're asking me, is 2 weeks going to make a huge difference to everybody? Well, no, it probably won't.
In that case, Chairman, I formally propose we defer the motion, this item for 2 weeks. I don't know if I have a second.
Can I add something either before or after?
Can I just ask Councillor Wright?
I just wanted somebody to clarify for me, please, who relevant members are.
It was exactly the same point. I hope that we won't take a decision to pass this today, because I think that I would feel very uncomfortable about that. What I would like to come back to the next meeting is something with a lot more. I mean, the current delegation is very vague, and I think given the sensitivity of this situation, we need something more precise.
We'll be tying that up in the next meeting.
Yes.
So you've got 2 week deadline then?
If this was delayed for a fortnight, and I heard the chief say he'd prefer it within there, if it was delayed for a fortnight and anything did come out of the FBU or anything that needed acting on straight away, you could already meet with the chairman and others and do that under the current legislation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right, so delaying this a fortnight, you've still got, if there is something crops up that really needs to take action on, you and the chairman and others can do it.
Yes.
So by delaying this actual paper a fortnight, doesn't really matter, does it?
I think the problem is I think we're still trying to find out who relevant members are. For example,
Well,
if
I
it's chair
think-
of
That's
the
pretty obvious.
Well, I think that would solve
Yeah.
the problem.
I think my suggestion was, as I said, that myself, who the leader of each, the appointee of each of those groups, plus Councillor Goodwin. That would seem to be the right way at the moment.
But that's not what's written. And it's also not what's legal, because the legal delegation is to the chief officer.
In consultation with the relevant members, but I think the chief would be silly not to take on board your comments now, if we could try and use that and not consult with the people that the chairman has just described. So you don't actually need to do a formal resolution of that, because you can actually do that.
So the chief will discuss with myself as chairman and representatives of the political parties and Councillor Goodwin, should you want to do so. Is that okay?
No, sorry, I want to be clear. We've already had a proposal to delay it for a week, which we need to vote on, for a fortnight, which we need to vote on. What your alternative is that you rewrite the recommendation. Is that correct? Because the current recommendation doesn't include anything, but it just says the chairman in
No, he wanted
consultation with
that
the chief
in
fire
writing.
authority and other members as appropriate. We need to have that clearly in writing.
Well, if the chief
Preferably
wants
for
to
the next
come back
meeting.
to the next meeting with an amended paper,
Yes,
Yes.
that's fine.
Yes.
Yes.
but if he wants to keep it as it is, he can also.
Part of bringing this paper, of course, was to engage in the debate in the first place.
We've done that.
If there's a delay by a fortnight, then I'd rather that fortnight was now rather than in a fortnight's time.
Sure.
So that was part of the reason for bringing it to this meeting.
Yes. So, well, we have a proposal. Can I? And who was the proposal again? Mike, who seconded it? All those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Right, well, that is carried. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish everyone once again that so far everything has worked well, and that's the credit that everyone wants. So thank you all. Right. The next item on the agenda is item 8, appointments to committees and outside bodies. The amended list has been tabled. Are you all happy with that? Item 9.
Sorry, you said are we all happy with it?
Sorry, Councillor.
I'm actually on which committee as a substitute.
I actually think Councillor Chapman, if you regret, you should be taken off the health and safety.
Yes. Well, I was going to say I'm awaiting
major surgery.
I'm awaiting, yeah, and so I don't think it would be appropriate for me to be on there as a substitute at the moment.
So do you want to come off all of this?
I'd just like to come off as a substitute.
So right, we'll have to revisit that.
As far as Appeals Committee.
We'll put, for the moment, can we fill those positions if he's happy with Councillor Owen? Yes?
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Barber,
Mr. Chairman, just in relation to the Health and Safety Committee, I've actually been asked to attend that, and I've actually sat on the last Health and Safety Committee meeting, if you need to amend the paper. Page 3.
So, you're happy to swap
I
over?
was asked to attend and I did attend it, and I'm more than happy to keep doing that.
Okay. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Nothing else on that paper? In which case we move to item 9, minutes of the overview of the scrutiny meeting on the 16th of January, which I think we dealt with in some detail already.
Yeah.
Everybody happy?
Yeah.
Over the page, minutes of the policy meeting on the 5th of December. Everyone happy? And item 11, minutes of the resources committee on the 17th. Everyone happy? Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for your contributions to this